Do you feel that your Jewishness allows you to address that topic in a way that if I did it on stage, just be, well, you're an anti-Semite?
A lot of like the edgy comedy, like the kill Tonys of it all. Sometimes when Israel comes up, being pro-Palestine is woke. But on the other side of it, they love making anti-Semitic jokes.
Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel are actually screwing over American Jews in many ways.
They're cozying up with people who are anti-Semites, who do not like the Jews, who will turn on the Jews, all in the name of a country they're not even citizens of.
I mean, he's talking about sending American citizens to El Salvador now, not just alleged MS-13 members who aren't MS-13 members. He's talking about sending American citizens who commit crimes to a foreign gulag.
And I think there's just not enough people who are taught what bullshit is and how to see through it. And I don't think the Democratic Party is interested either because they got their own round of bullshit. You know, at the end of the day, Bill Maher and Trump have a lot more in common than not.
He's been obsessed with the woke left and free speech.
Of course.
And here he is having dinner with the most anti-free speech politician in modern American history.
We're watching huge comedians like toe the line for the president? Well, then you're not a fucking comedian anymore. You are a propagandist.
I'm Mehdi Hassan.
I'm Gianmarco Soresi.
And we're not kidding, the podcast from Zeteo where I get to talk to funny people about serious things and I hope funny things as well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you first time on.
I know.
On our anniversary show.
I'm thrilled.
As we celebrate our first Webby, we're not kidding, just won a Webby award. It's very nice to win an award.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I hope we can go bigger and better. Mm-hmm. So we're starting the new year of We're Not Kidding with you, who I've been following on social media. I know lots of people probably come to you and saw you through clips.
Yeah.
Your clips are very viral.
Yeah.
They're very entertaining. We're going to show some of them soon. But what are you up to right now? We're in DC, but you're not based in DC, eh?
No, I grew up in Potomac, Maryland.
Okay.
So I was
You know the
here
area.
for big DC. I was here for the DC Sniper. That's always a cultural cornerstone for people who
Hiding
grew
in
up
gas
here.
stations, like ducking.
Oh, well, I was about to fail out of PE, and they canceled it because of the DC Sniper.
So the DC Sniper helped you get grades.
Get to 8th grade.
Wow. But PE was blocking you from
PE,
8th grade, not
that's-
math.
No, not
Not
math.
physics.
Just soccer. Just being a
But
lazy
you
kid.
are of Italian heritage.
Italian.
Not good at soccer?
Italian. Oh my
Football?
God. No. The Jewish side took
I
over
was just
there.
in Italy, and I got in an Uber, and the driver couldn't speak English, and I can't speak Italian, but we bonded over football, soccer. We just literally talked to each other
You just
through
said
players'
goal
names.
back and forth.
No,
Oh,
we just said players' names.
Sure.
He was like Lazio, which was his club, and I said Paul Gascoigne, and he went Gaza. It was really good.
That's
and my
beautiful.
daughter was a backseat who was also a foot fan. I said, see, universal language.
Sports is very powerful. It's
Very,
a language
very
I
powerful.
don't speak.
No, I don't normally speak it, but I'm from childhood. So actually, I want to talk to you about your childhood. I want to talk a lot of things about you because I find you fascinating. But before I get to that, where can people see you? I just want to say, where are you going right now? Where are you on tour?
I'm on tour all the time, going to Milwaukee, going to Nashville, going to Europe, going to London.
Going to London, my
Going
city.
to London.
Have you done comedy in London before?
I have done comedy in London before. It's great.
What's the British audience like versus American audience?
I mean, honestly, it's curated so that they like American comedy. It's fans, you know. It's the days are gone where you go and you perform for just anybody.
Yeah. And then you get some drunk British heckler.
No, I don't.
Oi, mate, that's not funny.
We'll see when I do Edinburgh later in August. But no,
Scots are
London's
lovely.
beautiful.
But I was just wondering when comedians go to different cities, different countries, how it translates.
Being an American comedian is so lucky because people know, you know, we shove our culture down the world's throats. They know I can reference, I was in Australia referencing the judge in Alabama who ruled embryos are now people, and they know that.
Yeah.
If they come here and they say anything,
Yeah.
we don't know what they're saying at
Yeah.
all.
If they're like talking about some Australian political drama.
Oh my God.
Why would we know? Who's the Prime Minister of Australia? I'm joking. I don't expect you to know.
I know the one who disappeared in he went swimming and never came back.
Which one was that?
Oh, I had a good job. That's the crowd work I do there. All my crowd work overseas is like, so who's in charge here?
Okay.
What's going on?
Well, I've just embarrassed myself. Liking this video? Then don't just watch. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And tap the bell so you never miss a video or live show. But if you want early access to exclusive content, then you have to head to zeteo.com and subscribe now. You'll be supporting fearless, independent journalism. You've been doing comedy for over a decade, I believe. I've seen you on social media. A lot of people have seen you over the last year, in particular on the subject of Israel.
Sure.
You are Jewish. I was about to say, I think it's fair to say, but it's accurate to say that you are Jewish.
Yes.
Are you fully Jewish, half Jewish?
I mean, my mom's Jewish,
Okay.
so according
you're
to
Jewish?
the thing,
Yeah, you're Jewish.
I'm
But
Jewish.
then you've got a very Italian name. So your dad?
Yeah, but my dad's like a little bit Italian, so he's playing it up.
Okay.
Mom's fully Jewish. In fact, she's playing it down. She got the nose job.
But
I'm sure we look a lot more alike than
they played you up Italian with Gianmarco. They went full on.
They did, because my dad enjoys The Godfather, all these things. But no, very, very Jewish.
Well, let's start our conversation with a clip that I saw of you. One of the first clips I saw, which I was like, this is hilarious. We're going to play this clip about you talking about anti-Semitism.
Jewish on my mom's side, Italian on my dad's side. I'm part of a secret group that runs the world's plumbing. That's an example of an anti-Semitic joke. And I bring that up because that's what anti-Semitism used to mean. It used to mean you'd say, oh, Jews, they run the banks, they run Hollywood, they're all cheap, they all have big noses. But then something changed. Something changed, and now anti-Semitism seems to mean criticizing Israel in any way, shape, or form, which feels different. I mean, now if you say something like, oh, I think Israel should stop bombing innocent civilians, some people are like, that's a stereotype. Not all Jews shouldn't bomb innocent civilians.
I've got so many things I want to say about that clip.
Please.
First of all, did you make a conscious attempt post-October the 7th to talk more about issues like this? Or were you always doing this kind of humor?
No, I think per my point earlier, my mom, we never really talked about Judaism in any meaningful way. We went to temple once or twice a year, but I never got the Israel talk that I very quickly learned. I did do Birthright.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did when I was I went to college for musical theater, so I knew very little about the world. That's my only defense.
Okay.
That I called, someone told me, they said, oh, you can get this free trip to a thing. And I was like, cool.
Okay.
And they did an interview. They said, how many times do you go to temple? I said, 5 times this year, my whole life. And then at the end, they go, do you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? And I was like, oh my God, not if you let me go. And so I did that trip, but again, very, very zero understanding of politics. I was just kind of a good Democrat boy. That's just how I fell in line.
But you went to Israel as a kid, you came back and thought what?
They did very little there. I remember all the soldiers on the trip were liberal in that they said we should do a 2-state solution. And that was kind of the end of the conversation. So I didn't learn anything, really. I didn't really fully grasp a lick. And then it was only later that kind of I learned a little bit more about politics and kind of figured out the things that I valued and cared about and what was being done. And then I think I just learned more. Particularly, I knew some certainly before October 7th, but I think after it's kind of synthesizing with the people whose views I respected in other areas, talking about the Palestinian suffering and investigating it further through their eyes, while also seeing this incredible, sizable fraction of Jewish people who I'd never seen be political in their entire lives suddenly feel gung-ho certainty Israel is. It can do whatever, it can do no wrong. And I think just kind of witnessing that schism made me learn fast more about the history. And I think I talk about the things that I feel like I have the right to talk about. And so I saw Jewish friends, American Jewish friends, suddenly claim anti-Semitism in this new way that was very clearly hypocritical in my view. So even the jokes that I make, they're really about the thing that I know, which is the American Jews using anti-Semitism as a undefeatable argument against any critique of a country that they're not even a citizen of. And that's the hypocrisy that I felt like, because I was so close, I could see it so within me, that I found an angle on, a comedic angle, but one that rang true to my own views.
And do you feel that your Jewishness allows you to address that topic in a way that if I did it on stage, it would just be, well, you're an anti-Semite talking about anti-Semitism?
100%. I mean, I think I live in the world that all other comedians live in, where especially when things are put online outside the club, where you can get in trouble if people feel that you're overstepping your bounds, sometimes rightfully so, sometimes over-exaggerated. But I think in the realm of talking about Judaism, I feel a degree of like, go ahead, accuse me of anti-Semitism. I know other people are being silenced because of the strength of that accusation. You can't do it to another Jew. And I've gotten emails.
Not for a lack of trying.
Not for lack of trying. People have written me, they say, you're pretending to be Jewish. You're putting this upon you so you can make your jokes. And I go, when I go down the street and the Hasidic Jews go, are you Jewish? They're putting it on me. I was circumcised. I have been told I am a Jew. That's part of the whole thing. They said, because my mom is Jewish, I am Jewish. So you don't just get to take away all that years and logic just because it serves your political interest in this one moment.
And a political thing, that's what's so interesting. It's not a religious test that they're imposing on you.
Yes.
It's about a foreign state, as you say, which is fascinating. It is a very emotive issue. It is a very divisive issue in Jewish communities. There's a bit of a generational gap. A lot of younger Jewish folks are more critical of Israel. A lot of older Jewish folks are still very loyal and defensive. Do you have to be careful around, I don't know, extended family? I know you've mentioned your grandfather on stage, like when you make these gags.
Yeah, no, I kind of argue with my mom sometimes about it, just because, you know, the way the news presents all these things, if you're getting your intake from mainstream media, you're just not getting a three-dimensional picture of people suffering. And I mean, you know, Twitter, for its a gazillion shortcomings, one thing you do get on an app that doesn't censor is you see some brutal images and videos of Palestinians suffer in a way that you can't deny, in a way that they would never show on MSNBC in the morning, that my mom wouldn't see. So we argue about me trying to be like, you need to look at this. You need to understand the full picture. So we certainly have arguments. And I think when it comes to, like, you know, showbiz stuff, I'm lucky because I'm a touring comedian. My base is, do people buy tickets to see me? That's my power. But beginning, middle, end. I'm not reliant on a producer. If one comedy club doesn't want to work me, there's many others that will.
Have you had comedy clubs saying they don't want to work with you since October 7th?
Not me directly. There's certainly, like, I've been vocal in a way where there was a comedy club I was no longer interested in working in either. But I've had friends, certainly, that it's, again, whenever you deal with the arts, it can always be tough, because did you not work at the comedy club because they didn't want to book you anymore because you were bombing, or is it because of your views? It's always muddled. It's like when people say they're shadow banned online, and you're like, is it that, or
nobody wants to follow you?
And there's always that. But there are some clubs, certainly one in particular in New York, where, like, the owner was literally writing another comedy club saying, you shouldn't be booking this one comedian, a friend of mine who was posting pro-Palestinian things online. And so, of course, it exists. There are a lot of Jewish people in show business, which I feel like is, again, another thing that if you're not Jewish, gets taken as anti-Semitic, as if you're contributing to the conspiracy that the Jews run show business, as opposed to the reality that there are a lot of Jews in show business. And whether it be comedy, and of course, there's reasons for that. There's a long history of Jews being relegated to the performing arts, which were seen as like a lower class thing, and the Follies to the Hollywood Network to comedy clubs.
And a lot of these people in showbiz, especially in Hollywood, are super liberal on most issues.
That's
what's so fascinating.
On most issues, and I think,
except this one,
and that was also kind of the conundrum of Jews who, you know, maybe I did a Black Lives Matter march with in 2020, suddenly being resolute that any military action by Israel was 100% on the up and up, and no, it should not be questioned at all, and the hypocrisy was just so fucking apparent. And I think within show business, you know, again, the conspiracy is the idea that the Jews run Hollywood, as in, like, there is a network, there is an overall plan. But what did happen is there were a lot of Jewish people in positions of power, and a lot of them felt very singularly when it came to Israel being correct and shouldn't be criticized. And so suddenly they acted in ways that they were affecting and making business decisions based on someone else's political views. And that's when I go, you guys, my Jewish brothers and sisters, you are contributing and actually in this moment creating a system of Jewish interests running Hollywood in these pockets.
Yeah.
And you should be ashamed for living up to that conspiracy in this moment. And who's going to be able to call it out? Who can? But another Jewish person. You know, and that's where I see my role. That's where I see my strength, my freedom to speak freely, and my ability to have a unique angle that I can hopefully come up a joke with.
And you've certainly done that. Look, I'm someone who's been concerned about anti-Semitism for a while. It's funny because pro-Israel people like to call me anti-Semitic, but that's
of course.
By the by. My record goes back, over a decade ago. I wrote a piece about anti-Semitism in the Muslim community. I've been a staunch opponent of what you might call traditional anti-Semitism, which is on the rise. Basically, right-wing people demonizing a minority group, attacking them. We saw it in the first Trump term, synagogues attacked.
Of course.
You mentioned Twitter. It's funny that Twitter is that double-edged sword where you can get lots of information. But Musk has also amplified old school anti-Semites. He himself has endorsed conspiracy theories about Jews.
I honestly, I think they struggle. I see a lot with a lot of like the edgy comedy, like the kill Tonys of it all. Sometimes when Israel comes up, they know in their mind, in the edgy world, that like being pro-Palestine is woke. So they don't go that direction. But on the other side of it, they love making anti-Semitic jokes. And so they're really stuck with
so
they
true.
do not have, this is one of the political conversations they do not have a point of view on. And honestly, they would never be pro-Israel because they want to make jokes about Jews. And they wouldn't be pro-Palestine because that is woke. And
But what you said is so fascinating about the kind of anti-Semitic tropes about Hollywood. And it goes beyond Hollywood, right? It goes to the government. It goes to Wall Street. These tropes exist everywhere. Right? The Jews run the banks.
Sure.
The Jews run the cinemas. The Jews own Congress. These are all anti-Semitic tropes.
Of course.
My worry as someone who has studied anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic tropes, and seen the return of old school anti-Semitism, not the new anti-Semitism, which is criticizing Israel, but the old school stuff, which is the Jews are too powerful, is when you have instances whereby people are silenced in the name of defending Israel. That's only going to increase anti-Semitism because that's going to take every bigoted trope and say, well, it's true. See? They're going to point to every example of another public figure silencing criticism for Israel and saying, see? And it really worries. And I don't understand how so many people, I say this as a Muslim, my cousins in the Jewish community don't see how dangerous a road that is to go down.
It's short-sighted.
To fuel the right wing, by the way, the right wing people.
To fuel the right wing that will turn on them in a second.
Exactly. When people say, oh, the left is anti-Semitic, I'm like, can you point to me a leftist who has walked into a synagogue and gunned down Jews? I don't know of any. But I do know under Trump, two right-wingers echoing Trumpian rhetoric walked into synagogues and gunned down Jews, right? So for me, that is a very real, and the same people, by the way, the same people who gun down Jews, gun down Muslims. We know that evidence shows that anti-Semitism and Islamophobia tends to exist in the same person.
Of course.
So for me, I'm looking at this thinking, this is really bad. Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel are actually screwing over American Jews in many ways.
Of course, I think, and it's got to be a conundrum. I think as a Jewish person, it's to be a conundrum where, of course, there are anti-Semitic people who love the idea of a place where all the Jews should go live.
Yeah.
Like that is in line with a certain kind of thinking. And I think that's...
Some of the earliest supporters of Zionism held that view.
Of course.
Like, get them out of Europe.
And so I think it's a short-sighted thing where again, I didn't have this kind of indoctrination in childhood of just thinking that, maybe when everything goes to shit, this one place is going to be safe. So they prioritize Israel above all other views. But they're cozying up with people who are anti-Semites, who do not like the Jews, who will turn on the Jews, all in the name of a country they're not even citizens of.
You've also got conservative Christians who like Israel because they think that once all the Jews are in one place and dead, then Jesus will come back, which I've always found a fascinating alliance.
I remember that one clip of like Mitt Romney talking about what he thinks will happen eventually, and you're like, oh, okay, this is...
By the way, with your Italian name, do people ever say anti-Semitic things to you about Jews not realizing that you're Jewish?
I think I give off enough Jew that they can tell. I mean, there's not... I cannot pass a Hasidic guy, whether they're 12 or whether they're 80, and they go, are you Jewish? Are you Jewish? So they can tell. They can see it.
You mentioned the kind of crackdowns for a foreign country. Bassem Youssef, who's often a co-host on this show, made a point very recently with me on this show that he moved from Egypt to the US because he couldn't criticize his own government in Egypt. Mm-hmm. He gets to the US and he discovers he can't criticize a foreign government in the US, which is a bizarre state of affairs. Like Harvard just adopted the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, where many of the examples of anti-Semitism, I think 7 out of 11, relate to criticism of Israel. And there's this ironic position now wherein, for example, in Harvard, you can say America was born out of racism, and that's fine. If you say Israel was born out of racism, that's one of the anti-Semitic definitions. So we're in this bizarre world now where free speech is under threat because Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government and their supporters in the US have pushed these definitions. And I just wonder, when you look at, for example, the situation with Mahmoud Khalil, I know you're based in New York, what happened to this Columbia grad student whose wife recently gave birth? He asked, could he be let out from Louisiana for a couple of weeks to go be with his wife? And I said no. He's being held, a permanent resident, husband of an American citizen who just had an American child, because of his speech, his views. They've got nothing else on him. We've seen no evidence of terrorism, support for Hamas, just because he's pro-Palestinian.
And from the party that was so virulent about free speech, I just think conservatives are very good at kind of hammering home a big concept like free speech and hiding the asterisk that they introduce when they're in power, whether freedom, but all sorts of things. The thing is, they use language. So obviously, what do they go? They go, well, free speech, but you were supporting a terrorist group. And then if you go further into what do you mean supporting a terrorist group, and it's like a pamphlet that said like, please stop killing some innocent people. And so I just think the American population is so not trained to see past what seems to me like a very first level layer of bullshit easily. So all you have to do is free speech, but you're supporting a terrorist group. And they don't go, well, what does that mean? What do you mean? How can that definition of supporting a terrorist group mean whatever the fuck you want it to?
Isn't it because they never really believed in free speech? It was always about free speech for us, for people I agree with. They don't actually believe in the concept of free speech.
Of course, but that's why all those people who kept claiming it, I think they have to be just skewered constantly. Yes. Because it was not that long ago.
Yeah.
It was so recent that all we were talking about was free speech and be allowed to say it. And it's like, okay, if you really wanted to say this slur, then at least you got to join it with this. If you really want to believe in free speech, hammer it home, or you just have to humiliate them. Say you do not believe in free speech, and that needs to be the moniker for Trump, for any of the people supporting these.
I mean, it's not even old, right? They're currently, while cracking down on free speech, are continuing to say we're the party of free speech. Trump administration is giving out awards for free speech champions while they crack down on Mahmoud Khalil and multiple other people for their speech. You mentioned bullshit. I mean, Donald Trump is the master of bullshit in our era. As a comedian in the Trump era for a second Trump term, what was your November last year? He wins. What was your reaction? Were you thinking this is good for business, bad for America?
No. I think listen, you can make jokes out of anything. It's more just all Trump shows is just how broken all systems of accountability are. And I include that, more honestly with the Democrats and the complete failure, the desire to look at this terrible guy and focus all your attention on just going, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, without creating something better that would win. That is just a moment of disgust with my own country, which hopefully I'm allowed to say for now. but yeah, I think it was once it happened, you went, of course. I mean, and who do I blame? But I blame Democrats. I blame a lot of the systems that prevented an inspiring candidate to show a better path.
Yeah.
And of course I
allowed Donald Trump to make a comeback.
They
should have prosecuted him long ago.
And we should all, I remember when he came out with the NFT cards, and I said, we've all had, it's over.
Yeah.
Oh, surely hawking NFT cards is the end of it. But that's just how fucked up everything is. And the fact that there hasn't been a greater accountability, it's always about him and how did he get away with it? It's like, no, the system allowed this to happen. This guy's talented as an entertainer, but the system allowed it he's not some magician.
He's a magician in the sense that he gets away with something that I can't think of any other politician in our lifetimes being able to get away with the manifest dishonesty and bullshit that he gets away with. I mean, you mentioned, for now, can I say this stuff? I mean, he's talking about sending American citizens to El Salvador now, not just alleged MS-13 members who aren't MS-13 members. He's talking about sending American citizens who commit crimes to a foreign gulag. Meanwhile, he's lying about the people who are already there. I don't know if you saw this image that he put up. I think we can pull it up. That is allegedly, these are the knuckles of Mr. Kilmer Abrego Garcia, who is the man from Maryland, who was under protective status from a judge, sent to El Salvador, falsely claimed that MS-13 does not exist. They literally photoshopped that onto his hand. And then the president of the United States put it up on Twitter where there is no community note last time I checked. I don't understand. And there's the White House acting like 6-year-old children. By the way, comedy writers at the White House, they just want to be edgelords with their stupid tweets.
I mean, the White House account on Twitter, I can't even say, I mean, the disgusting things that they do. But this is where I go, like some of the things that the White House, this Twitter account has posted online, whether it be the ASMR, you saw the ASMR of taking immigrants away. And there has to be a way to show the vileness to the people who would be uncomfortable with it. There's such, the internet allows these people to operate in a way that is totally incongruous of like, you know, Trump can say this on TV, but this on Twitter. He's able to speak out of 10 sides of his mouth to now a fractured media landscape. And so whether it be the Democrats, whether it be any opposition party, they have to figure out a way to utilize these same systems to dunk on him, prove him wrong, show that it's misinformation, and ultimately come up with messages like you are anti-free speech and hammer it home until people rightfully see that the Republican Party is not the free speech party at all. And to show how bullshit works. My father, we watched Apprentice season 1. My dad has the art of the deal, but he would always say to me, don't bullshit a bullshitter. And I think there's just not enough people who are taught what bullshit is and how to see through it. And I don't think the Democratic Party is interested either because they got their own round of bullshit. And that's the problem is no one wants to speak honestly to the American people. And so the Democrats can't overcome this because they also want to bullshit.
As a comedian, do you feel you can speak honestly?
I think that's what comedians should be doing. I think the idea of having presidents on your podcast and political figures running for office. If you want to play that game, that's one thing. If you want to go there and be a journalist, and some of it's like comedians kind of flirted with journalism the same time that journalists were flirting with comedians, and I say that ironically, we are on a show like that. But then you have to be held to different accounts. If I have a politician on my show, I need to be held to a journalistic standard the same way that if you headline the DC Improv, I would say, where are all the fucking punchlines?
Yes.
Like if we are going to wait, I'm sure you would. But if we're going to wait in each other's territory, we need to also be held to the same.
We don't have politicians on this show. Right, I do another show in another part of this studio where I grill politicians and I wear a suit and tie.
Sure.
But on this show, we're having a chat about comedy. But you're right.
I was going to say no tie. I was very disappointed.
I know. People do get disappointed.
That's the problem with this cozying up to these. And suddenly they're being invited to things. And I go, well, then you're not a fucking comedian anymore. You are a propagandist. And you are coming up, these people going to the inauguration. Comedians should be in the back.
Joe Rogan was at the inauguration.
Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn.
But these are proudly independent media, independent broadcasters.
It's not
Once you turn up at the inauguration of a president, whether Democratic or Republican, how independent are you?
We all know, certainly, and you have to contend with this more than I do, but when you criticize someone publicly, it's harder if you know them. Yep. It's harder if you get dinner with them. It's harder if you text them sometimes. And I do not think comedians have the power, the strength, to be cozying up, go to the events, drink the wine, hang out, party, go on the jet, and then be honest about their critiques.
You've been very critical of what you call the anti-woke comedy movement. Who are they?
Joe Rogan is certainly the face of it. But I think a shitload of comedian podcasts have been cozying up. And any comedian who has had
and they also pretend to be apolitical, but they're basically platforming the right.
Absolutely. And maybe they went into it. Some comedians got burnt by the woke move, by COVID, everyone being online, people getting in trouble for old jokes. Yeah, Me Too, certainly. And so some of them said, oh, here's a new haven for me.
Free
here's
speech
a place
party.
where it's, But now Now that the thing that was like the rebellious group is the fucking president, you're not punk anymore. You're not cool anymore. That's the fucking principle. And you're like going out there like talking about how cool the principle is and saying that he believes in free speech when he doesn't. That's where I go, you're no longer a comedian. You have to admit what you are is you work for the state in this particular instance. And that's not a comedian. The jester should occasionally, be scared, or politician should not want to be with a comedian. Michelle Wolf was the last person who, like in a really public setting, it felt like she had the chutzpah to go, I'm going to talk shit, but it's hard.
Yeah, and she got everyone turned on her.
Everyone turned on her.
The media, politicians,
but that's how it should be.
Yes.
The problem is comedians got too rich, too powerful, too famous, and they didn't contend with it. And now we're watching huge comedians like toe the line for the president to go up there and go, hey, he lets you say whatever you want and he gets mad pussy. And you're like, fuck you. That's so disappointing. You're supposed to be out here critiquing those in power.
You tweeted, it was a great line, I wrote it down. I love how comedians have gone from it's a big club and you ain't in it, the George Carlin line, to I've had the club members on my podcast and they're actually really nice, so everyone should just do what they say. Fucking pathetic. Yeah. You tweeted. I assume you're talking about...
Was that before Bill Maher? Did I tweet? I feel like...
That was before Bill Maher.
That was before Bill Maher, yeah.
But Rogan, obviously you had Rogan, who is the face of it, as you say. Someone did a little... we should pull it up at some point, but somebody did a kind of grid of like Joe Rogan with Chamath, Joe Rogan with Thiel, Joe Rogan with Musk, like all these billionaires. And it's like, huh? Like, as you say, that's the principle. These are the richest men on the planet.
And then
you're supposed to be making fun of them.
They'll look at Rogan with Bernie and they'll go, look, he kind of agrees with Bernie on this.
10 years ago.
And it's like, yeah, I don't think he has a strict political ideology because he never became a politician. He's just a dude, but he's not analyzing himself or asking himself the question of like, how are these people using me?
Yes.
And I think a lot of comedians, we're about to see with Bill Maher, they really do believe in their soul. If I talk to this guy, who knows? Maybe I sway him a little. And I go, that's where you've become blind to what people in power do. They do what they want. You're being used. You're being used. And maybe you agree with them on some things. Like, at the end of the day, Bill Maher and Trump have a lot more in common than not. And that's part of the whole thing.
So Bill Maher, just for context for people who aren't aware, who claims to be a liberal, I laugh out loud as he says that, he had dinner with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago recently. Let's have a clip. Let's play a clip of Bill talking about how that dinner went.
I told him I thought parts of his plan for Gaza were wacky, but that I had supported him in the idea that Gaza could be Dubai instead of hell. I told him he was wrong when he tweeted the night before that I was critical of all things Trump. Not true. Check the tapes. Moving Israel's embassy to Jerusalem, loved it. The border did need to be controlled. I'm glad the cops are getting their morale back.
Bill Maher, you talk about it wasn't so long ago. He has been the face of the free speech brigade for years.
And by the way, only because it hurt his bottom line.
Hurt his bottom line. And because he doesn't like pro-Palestine people. Israel has always been a strong issue for him. He's one of these guys who likes to be liberal except on Israel.
I'm sure everyone he hooks up with is Gen Z, and so he's tired of hearing about their pronouns and whatnot.
But he's been obsessed with the woke left and free speech.
Of course.
And here he is having dinner with the most anti-free speech politician in modern American history.
And pitching it like he is having a conversation, creating dialogue. And I talked about with my podcast co-host, Russell Daniels, his point was like, oh, you want to have a conversation? Then go talk to a Trump supporter in the world. This is just two millionaires having dinner together. You're just having a nice dinner.
Two racist, bigoted billionaires. Bill Maher has his own history of Islamophobia,
of course,
anti-black remarks, etc., etc.
But the idea that he pitched, like his version of saving face was like, we had a dialogue, and it's like, no, you didn't at all. You just had a nice, probably really good dinner and laughed
and when you left, Donald Trump probably chuckled with his advisors. Another one down.
Of course, and I just think people need to look at Bill Maher, talk about bullshit, and just go, okay, this is not a comedian anymore. This is kind of a pseudo-journalist who hides behind the face of comedy, where there's a lot of that these days, both sides, comedians kind of pretend to be journalists and vice versa, and go, based on his own, if you think Trump tried to overturn the election and thwart democracy.
Yes.
If you think that and you purported that, why the fuck would you have dinner with him? And that not be the only thing. You should have walked in and be like, hey, what the fuck, from the get-go.
Yeah.
Not, hey, I kind of like that one thing you did. Didn't love it when you almost tried to destroy the basic tenet of America.
Did he even bring up
He didn't even mention it.
Or Badr Khan Suri or Rumeysa Osta, all these people? He's a free speech champion. Aren't these the biggest free speech cases of our time?
Of course, this was the religulous guy. This is the guy who went on and on about religion and suddenly is on his own show saying, well, Israel was promised to the Jews in the Bible. Ever heard of it? And you go, that's, again,
so true. By the way, you said that he was a comedian until he went to see Trump. I would argue he wasn't a comedian for a long time. He's not been funny for many years.
Sure. I think Norm Macdonald says something like, he's the least funniest person I've ever heard claim to be a comedian. Again, it's just like he uses comedy to disguise that it's just kind of a light political opinion show. And
old school bigotry. And, a lot of people listen to him. That's what's shocking. I don't know how anyone likes that kind of smarminess. A lot of his audience nowadays are kind of right-wingers who say, even Bill Maher, he plays that role of even liberal Bill Maher. You'll see that Fox News Daily Mail headline everywhere. And he validates for a lot of quote-unquote centrists and conservatives. But my point is, what is liberal about him these days?
Of course. But it's just that he has the memory of a goldfish. And he certainly does. And I'm sure he's smarter and manipulative in a way. But people have this memory of a goldfish where it's like, who cares if Trump is nice? Who cares if Trump gives you a free hotel room for a week? Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Look at the actions of this person and be angry every day. And Maher, in this one moment, he's clearly just trying to rebalance himself, recalibrate, make sure he can maybe get some more Republican folks.
Yeah.
You can't trust. You have to be skeptical of all entertainers and news people and people who want viewers. You have to keep that in the back of your head.
I don't think anyone can understate I don't want to say pressure, because part of it is they're doing it willingly, but this desire to we need more Republicans watching entertainment shows,
of course,
watching our networks, the pressure from C-suites, the pressure from performers on stage, on camera. There's an obsession with we need more Republican viewers. And it's a dumb way of approaching journalism, comedy, entertainment.
It's an outside in too. It's like trying to attract someone as opposed to, no, we need to make something good that people are drawn to.
Authentic,
and
honest.
It's the same with comedy. I think my criticism of a lot of liberal comedy is it did become obsessed with Trump, and it felt like Trump was such a threat, which he was and is, that they had to constantly just focus on him being bad and never critiquing all around them. And so people looked at it and they said, you're obsessed. You're not talking about the fact that Biden's a senile old man. In fact, when Jon Stewart does it, everyone gets so fucking mad at him. And no one, 3 weeks later goes, well, we should have listened.
Yes.
But that's the problem with trying to get more Republican viewers or more liberal viewers, is that you create a product that does feel so slanted that people write you off. And so I think a lot of those liberal comedians, they thought they were doing good the same way that Bill Maher maybe in his mind thinks he influenced Trump's thoughts on Iran. Those liberal comedians think that maybe they helped Trump lose. And by the way, he didn't lose. He won. And now many of these liberal comics, now no one who doesn't differ in your opinions will listen to you at all, because all you do is present a very singular mode. And I think that's the failure of liberal comedy and the cozying up and the thinking Obama was cool. And even, the same way The Onion, I think when The Onion writers said they regret how they made Joe Biden seem like Uncle Joe, that comedic slant. Or with Obama, there was an SNL sketch where it was he's cool. And it's yeah, you do look back and then you go, you were not criticizing the people in power. If you are not criticizing the people in power, you will ultimately lose your footing as someone who's trustworthy. People will eventually, there'll be enough bullshit.
Do you think that'll happen to Rogan? Forget Maher.
Absolutely. I think it already is. By the
way, on liberal comedy, we got to give it up to one exception, is the one and only Larry David, who wrote a fantastic op-ed for the New York Times this week called My Dinner with Adolf, or Adolf as we say in the UK, mocking Bill Maher's dinner with Trump.
Sure.
I urge everyone to read it. I'm not even going to read it.
It's very good. But let me just say, again, I have to speak as the comedian.
Please.
And people have pointed out, he was on SNL when Trump hosted and made a joke about Trump there.
Good point.
He did a show a long time with Cheryl Hines, who was at the wedding with RFK.
Receipts.
But of course, now listen, the problem is I feel safe enough now. Someday, if you told me if Curb was still going on, I might be a little more hesitant to be critical. But the point is, a lot of these people have some accountability taking to do. I think the fact that so many people interacted with Biden, including entertainers, and didn't point out that they were senile until George Clooney.
Even George Clooney had spent plenty of weeks and months previously doing fundraisers for him.
Of course.
Like, did you not notice?
Of course, and eventually he did. But I think Larry David, he's incredibly wealthy. He mingles with these people, and I do like, of course, when powerful people start throwing shit at each other. But we have to remember that this is not just some pure hero. RFK's number is in his phone.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Is he texting him every day, go fuck yourself, put the fluoride back in the water?
Oh, help the kids dying of measles in Texas?
Yeah. It's pretty
That's a
bad.
very good point. It's one big club.
It's one big club. And listen, I'm more than happy if that club is fighting with each other, because my hope is that the club breaks down a little bit, and that's always good.
Yep.
But if you're not in the club, you have to always be vigilant and critical of anyone in that club. And that includes the current president. That includes the person who lost being president. They're all hanging out together.
Certainly Trump was hanging out with everyone. One last question to you before we wrap up. You mentioned earlier you said, if I can still say this, and you talked about kind of honesty and punching up and speaking truth to power. Given Trump has talked about now threatening American citizens, as a comedian who is critical of Israel, critical of Trump, critical of the Democratic Party as well,
Sure.
Do you worry about what you will be able to say going forward? Have you had moments where you're like, maybe I shouldn't say that?
I don't know. I'm sure there might come a position where maybe I'm in a TV show, maybe I'm in a movie, and that person in Scream got fired. I mean, there's all sorts of people
Burr,
in those positions who have gotten in trouble. I mean, Rachel Zegler, I think, got thrown under the bus.
Yep.
And it's clear why. It's because of her political views.
Palestine. Because Gal Gadot was able to talk about Israel without the same backlash.
And I think what's lucky about the profession that I in and the money that I make, it comes from individuals buying tickets to shows. And I think as long as that's my main thrust, that's what I cling to, that's tough to lose. It can change. Someone could be mad about a joke I make and I lose. I certainly have lost. My yarmulke sales have plummeted. But as long as I have a direct one-on-one relationship with people who like my work, there is a safety in that. Now, are there opportunities I didn't get? I had a bigger comedian ask me, do you think? And I'm like, I don't know. And maybe there is some person who didn't work with me, or some person who will never work with me, or a TV show I will get fired from. I'm lucky that I have a means of making income that's separate from that. And in fact, prizes integrity in speaking your mind. And I'll have to face those things. And I certainly, maybe there will come a day where someone needs to call me out. And rightfully so. I still get sad about Jack Black, not speak, publicly having to kind of speak out against his bandmate for a joke about Trump that he laughed about on stage. He had a big movie coming up. I don't know. Anyone who's done show business enough knows that it's so complicated and nuanced that the general public has no idea what conversations occurred. For all I know, they talked, and that was the plan. But for me, I think no matter where I go in life, as long as I cling on to a direct relationship with people who like my work, I will always be able to make some kind of living. It could shift. But listen,
I'm not a comedian, but I feel like I could say the same thing. I feel like we're in a similar boat.
If we need to open up a funny bone in Venezuela, I mean, we'll figure it out.
You're not sure about Venezuela, but yes, I take your wider point. Gianmarco,
I performed in a prison before.
Where can people find you?
Well, if I'm still in the States, I tour all over the world. I'm going to be in Milwaukee soon. I'm going to be in Nashville. JianmarcoSoresi.com. Every social media handles Gianmarco Soresi, and my podcast is called The Downside with Gianmarco Soresi.
Check it out, and make sure you like and subscribe to this podcast, to We're Not Kidding, wherever you get your podcast. We just want a Webby. Head over to Zeteo.com, become a paid subscriber so you can watch these episodes as soon as they drop without any paywalls, before they get to YouTube. Check us out, support us, spread the word. We need more conversations like this. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm Mehdi Hassan.
I'm Gianmarco Soresi.
And we were not kidding. We're Not Kidding is a Zeteo production. I'm your host, Mehdi Hassan, and today's co-host was Gianmarco Soresi. Our executive producer is Kieran Alvey. Our senior producer and editor is Frank Capello. Our music was composed by Andy Clausen. Our design is by Alicia Tetone. Our mix engineer is Valentino Rivera. And the title card animation is by Ehsan Mezghali. Special thanks to Mohammed Abdul Bari for help with research. And we just want a Webby.